Hello, Jessi. Welcome to the Mentally About Us podcast. I'm so happy to have you today.
Hey, thanks for having me on here. I'm really excited.
Yeah, me too. So I'm very glad, and I'm super excited to talk about addiction because it's a very important topic that also has a lot of misconceptions that people don't understand. Like, we're going to get into that, the society wise and such. But before we get into that, in every Mentally About Us episode, we like to go deep into your past. So let's talk about before your addiction started. Can you just tell me a little bit into that?
Yeah, so I started pretty young. So I would say the majority of my life I have been in addiction. I started smoking at 13 years old and just really fell into it head first. Quickly became a priority for me and my main activity. Kind of put my other hobbies aside. So yeah, I kept smoking all through high school, into college, and then finally after college was able to start exploring different sides of myself that made me kind of have a huge shift in my thinking. Because prior to then, I had been really stuck in a cycle of negative self-talk. And so that's how I was able to kind of get out of it finally after trying so many times. I must have tried to quit like 100 times. Like I completely lost count. I pretty much right from the start wanted to get out of it, but just kind of had made it an emotional crutch and had really struggled to get over it.
Yeah. And when you said the age of 14, I feel like that's pretty much like the average. Like, you're entering high school, you're starting to become a teenager, starting to really, have a mind of your own and decisions and such. Were you surrounded by people who were doing the same thing as smoking? Do you feel that your decision of smoking was influenced by any way?
Yeah, so I grew up in a house with smoking. The adults around me were smoking. And as I was stepping into finding my own identity and wanting to be a part of a community, it made sense that I would try that. It's kind of as like an initiation. And I was hanging out with older friends at the time too, and just wanted that sense of belonging. So ended up trying it, but got hooked really bad.
Yeah, that makes sense when you're saying the sense of belonging, because as human beings, we all need a tribe. And if everyone around you is smoking, you're going to feel like, okay, I need to join. Otherwise, I'm going to be left behind and not feel loved and such. So if you are surrounded by that, which you are mentioning, it totally makes sense how you would get into it. Were you, when you started when you were 14, was it nicotine or was it marijuana or was it both?
It was both. So I started, the first time I smoked was a cigarette, and then I also picked up pot pretty soon. I kind of got misguided in a way that it was like, oh, don't smoke cigarettes, they're bad for you, smoke pot instead, and then wound up smoking both daily. So I just picked up another habit.
You know what's so interesting on that between the difference of nicotine and marijuana is a lot of people just say, oh, just do marijuana instead because it's natural and healthier. From this conversation, I actually do want to talk about THC a little bit, because there's this whole misconception. It's like, as long as you do THC, you're good, you're healthy. But I don't believe, because at the end of the day, there are still chemicals in there. So based off of your opinion, do you agree with me on that THC can also be, I don't know if I say as harmful, or I never done nicotine, so I don't have too much knowledge on that, but I've done THC.
Yeah, I found that THC was it's very mind altering in ways. So it was very difficult for me to stop because I would play this game, and I also ended up drinking a lot in college, where I would try to quit one habit and compensate with another. So I've done this experimenting, which is the strongest pull and what happens when I, take out X and put in Y and blah, blah, blah. So when I was not smoking cigarettes, never a very long time, maybe a couple weeks, maybe a couple months, but smoking pot instead, I would find, I've gotten this backwards. When I would quit smoking pot and just smoking cigarettes, then I found that I was really, really depressed, just plummeting in my emotions, thoughts of suicide, hopelessness. And so I think that pot had a stronger hold on my stability emotionally. I had a very strong emotional connection with cigarettes, but it would just tank me so bad. So I definitely think that playing with those hormones, smoking pot, is going to have a big effect on you. And I know that it affects your lungs because you can look at your pipe and see how black it is.
Oh my God.
Not pain-free. When I stopped smoking cigarettes for a time, I had a lot of dentistry problems. And so I realized that smoking cigarettes is awful for your mouth health. I'm like, okay, let me try to put this down for a while, and was just smoking pot. The dentist flat out asked me, are you smoking anything else besides cigarettes? Because any smoking at all is going to limit your blood flow in your mouth and enhance this gum disease that I was struggling with. So I don't think that it's healthy. I think it gets portrayed a lot as medicine.
Yes. Yeah.
Like you were talking about the THC, I'm not totally well versed in this, but my understanding is a lot of the medicinal properties are in the CBD, not in getting high.
Yeah.
And I also think the quality of weed has changed just even in my lifetime of smoking. Like I said, I started when I was 13, and the weed is so strong now. It is ridiculously potent, and I don't think that kind of potency is medicinal.
Yeah, I want to tell you a funny story just because it's funny, but at the time it wasn't funny. And the
Right.
reason I bring up the story is because you were saying like how strong it is and such. So I had a client I did social media management for that sold like the gummies and THC and such. And so naturally they send me all their products to make content. So I was like I've done like marijuana like before, like in high school and college, just recreational, like here and there, not much. So I was like, okay, I can do this. I have experience with marijuana and such, right? So I took a gummy under not realizing the milligrams and such. It said like, oh, take one. And I was like, okay, following what it's saying for like one serving. So I took the whole gummy, and guess how many milligrams it was?
Tell me. Oh,
Yeah. So think about
okay.
me.
Yeah, you were feeling that.
Yeah, I was in a panic. I was so close to calling an ambulance because I truly thought I was dying. It was absolutely one of the most horrifying experiences I've ever had in my life. I'm completely traumatized. You would never see me touch a gummy.
I'm so glad you're okay. Yeah, that can be really, and when you're not
Yeah.
expecting it to, you just stumble into that.
Yeah, I just didn't. I guess I just wasn't thinking about the strength of it. That's when you know I clearly didn't have knowledge about it. I mean, obviously, when I kept working with that client, I learned more as I went on. But like that first, before I even like started posting to their socials, like I didn't know anything. I was like, okay, I'll take one. But it's kind of crazy. It makes me wonder, it's like, why does it even say take one? Like there should be like especially with that much. It's like if someone's not like, and I was doing, research after 60 milligrams of people who are like long term, like are pros, and like so when and I'm not, so I'm supposed to really start with like 5 milligrams, and then obviously you go up. That's what you're supposed
That's
to do.
insane. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
so
you wouldn't think of it, just it's one. It doesn't seem that
exactly.
harmless.
So I
Yeah.
really truly think that there needs to be some change in that area.
Yeah.
I didn't tell my client that because I didn't want to like piss him off in any way, but in my head that's what I wanted to say. I'm like, you need to like, because also I've had some people like in the DMs like saying like, oh, I thought I ended up in the ER. Like, it wasn't that many people. It was like maybe 2 or 3, but still. And so when I felt at first, I felt very chill, and that's what I expected. I was like, okay, I feel like nothing can piss me off. Like that's how chill I am, right? And then like 20 minutes later, I just started feeling dizzy and like heaviness, and I was like, what the hell is going on? I was like on the phone with my boyfriend, and I was like, I don't feel good. And I was like, this
Yeah.
is weird. And before that happened, I was texting my friend who's done like gummies and such. And I was just like, I just took a gummy and I just feel great. And then she was like, how many milligrams? I'm like, 60. She's like, oh, see you on the, and then she was like, see you on the flip side. And then
Right.
I was like,
Oh my
what do you
goodness.
mean see me on the flip side? I was like, I don't know. She's funny. And then I saw the flip side.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was bad. It was like so, and all of a sudden I was like literally almost fell to the ground screaming, because also I mean like I have a lot of anxiety and I've had a history of panic attacks. I only had like one very serious one that put me in the ER, but this was like the second one. Like that completely triggered. I also felt like my whole nervous system was like burning.
Hmm.
Like it was just like I was like a Christmas tree, and it was just like I felt like if you put like an X-ray on me, you're just gonna see my nervous system just like freaking out. I really thought it was. And then when I was feeling dizzy and I was about to like pass out, like be like unconscious, I literally thought that was my like moment that I was about to die. And in my head, I'm just like, really, God, this is how I'm gonna go.
Off a gummy.
Eating a gummy, like, oh, how did Justine say? Oh, she just ate a gummy and just, that would have been a horrible way of dying. But I mean, any way of dying horrible besides in your sleep. But okay, sorry, go on.
Yeah, I think that speaks a lot to a lot of the misconceptions, like why people, it's all about beliefs, and we get these beliefs from good marketing. And
Mhm.
from, history, tradition, our family, that this stuff is going to like relieve stress and be relaxing. And it doesn't make sense because definitely nicotine is a stimulant.
Mhm.
THC can be a stimulant. And it's like, how are you going to relax if you're overstimulated? Doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
But that somehow that belief is so strong that that's what people come looking for, and that's what they keep coming back to. I used to tell myself that all the time, like, oh, I just need to relax. I'm so stressed out. I need to relax. And then I found myself, like you said, going through the anxiety, the paranoia with smoking pot for sure. Like, and then same thing with cigarettes. It's like, this isn't actually relaxing me, or it's very temporary, like you said, with that come up. But there's like a price to pay for that. It's like, I don't
Yeah.
know. I heard someone say that like when you drink, you're just stealing from tomorrow's happiness.
That's true. That's
That was
true.
kind
I
of,
mean, it
yeah,
of course depends how much you drink. Like I've had moments where I'll just like, yeah, and I just have a nice glass of wine or two and I feel fine in the morning and I feel like relaxed and fantastic. But then there's moments where you're like drinking tequila straight and then mixing like wine and liquor and then it's like you wake up and you're just like I hate everything and you're just like completely like depressed until like
yeah,
5 p.m. Been there. I want to go back on the whole stimulant thing that you were saying about nicotine and such. Is like when I see people smoking cigarettes, it's usually after they had a stressful event. So, because that's like what triggers them. So they just go out and they just like have a cigarette, they relax. Like that's how they what people say, and also what you see in movies. It's like, oh, you're working, and then you just get stressed out, so you go to the back, have like a cigarette break. You know how like people will say things like that.
right.
So I thought it was just like for someone who's never smoked nicotine, I don't know the experience. I was like, okay, I guess it's just a way to just de-stress, right? But if it's a stimulant, that is the opposite. So it's like,
Yeah,
is it
you're
like
gonna.
a placebo that just it's supposed to relax you, so it's gonna relax you, even though scientifically it's not relaxing you?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think it's belief is a huge part of it, that
Mm-hmm.
you believe it's going to help. So you turn to it for help over and over and over again. But I also do think that it's a chemical reaction going on where once you're addicted, you're kind of like in this deficit state,
Mm-hmm.
that you just kind of feel like crap all the time. And then when you smoke that
Yeah.
cigarette, you feel a little bit less crappy for a minute.
True.
But it's like a trap. It's like, well, I could just not smoke and then I wouldn't feel like this and like be turning to cigarette to feel a little bit less crappy. It's it's uh,
Yeah.
it's kind of a weird.
It's such a toxic cycle.
Yes, exactly. Like
That's crazy.
yeah, it has this effect too where it like numbs parts of your sensations, like I was talking
Mm-hmm.
about with my mouth. So what was happening was that I was you restrict the gum flow or the blood flow in your gums, and then it gets numb, so you can't feel the pain. So
Mm-hmm.
when you stop smoking, like your gums get all inflamed, you start bleeding, like you start feeling the pain, which is like a huge reason why when people start going through withdrawal, they're like, oh, hell no, like I'm going back. You know what I mean? Like I can't
Yeah.
deal with this. And it's because it kind of masks the messages from your body that are trying to help you. So that's part of it too.
Wow. Yeah, and most people if they start feeling the pain, they don't want to deal with it. They don't want to go through the withdrawal. They're just gonna like as you were saying, just keep masking it. Yeah, the whole toxic cycle. And the same thing with alcohol too is like, people are like really deep into alcoholism, like so deep like they've been doing it for like, I don't know, 34 years or whatever. It's like if they stop cold turkey, like they can actually die,
Right. Right.
which is horrifying. It's kind of like alcohol is like water. You need to survive. It's so crazy. Another thing I want to ask though, do you believe in addictive personalities?
It's tough to say. I don't know if I can buy into this gene that
Hmm.
but I think it's more of like a belief because when I go that direction, that actually really lifts me up. It makes me feel empowered. It makes me feel like I have choice.
Hmm.
And if I look at the disease model and that it's a gene and that I can never change this or that I have to fight this my whole life, like that's depressing. Like I've gotten to
Yeah.
the point where it's like, I don't want to smoke. I don't want to drink. And it's not like that I'm compelled to, you know what I mean? Like that it's like, or that if I did it, like I feel like that contributes a lot with like AA kind of mentality. It's like they
Hmm.
get you in this fear state, like that if you're just like damaged goods, and if you ever
Hmm.
have a drink, then you're gonna like go fall off the wagon. You're gonna be full on binge mode for months, and this happens to people, and it's really, really unhealthy. It's more like just that making a choice that you could
Yeah.
potentially moderate if you wanted to, but I just don't want to. Like, why I
Yeah.
have nothing to gain from it. I've been everywhere I can with it. I know exactly what it feels like, and I don't want that for myself anymore. But it's not like this fear that, oh, I can never ever have it or everything's going to be derailed. So it helps me feel like I have more empowerment.
Yeah, and control over your own life
Yeah,
as well. And it's so powerful to, really like have your own way of thinking, because I feel like a lot of people in society, like just not this topic of addiction, just overall, a lot of them just listen and just take in other people's opinions and then live off their opinions. And then they create their whole beliefs based off of what everyone tells them, which I know belief systems technically do come from like your caregivers, because when you're born, you don't have any beliefs. Your
right.
beliefs are given from your caregivers, but you make a choice once you get to a state that your brain is formed to the point where you can make decisions and you're like, okay, I don't like these whole beliefs that I have, like I can rewire my brain. And I feel like a lot of that also comes from, if you were to like meet people who influence you, that's also gonna be part of it. But yeah, that's like also can go like negative thinking and such. But one thing I like that you said is that, which I feel like you kind of debunked here, is that people think that if a recovering alcoholic has like, let's say, one drink, like one glass of wine, that they're gonna go off the rails. And you're saying like that's not true. It's fact. I never even heard that before. That's interesting to know. And maybe it could also can be like the media and shows and movies, right?
Yeah, it's the belief that you have. If you believe that, then you're going to end up doing it. We end up
True.
just playing out the beliefs that we have. And so that was like a huge shift for me. It was like even realizing the beliefs that I have, that like, hey, these are just stories and they can
Mm,
change. Because that you think that like, oh, the world is this way, of course, when you're on autopilot, when you're living, and it's like,
mhm.
has to be this way. This is the way I see it. This is the way it is for everyone, right? Like, I don't know if you fall into that, but I was definitely stuck in that. And it's like, no, there's actually radically different perspectives that we can take.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, yes. Oh, I can actually I'm probably gonna cut this part out, but I'm actually gonna do a solo episode that actually literally talks about that,
Awesome.
on how we need to stop shaming people for their opinions. Like that's one big thing. I don't know if the ads threads, like the new one that's kind of like the Instagram of Twitter, the
Yeah,
Twitter
I've
of
heard of
Insta.
it. I haven't signed up or anything yet, but I've heard
Yeah,
of it. Yeah.
it's a really crazy playground
Okay.
because the algorithm's so good that if you ask a question, I feel like there's a lot of trolls and really sad people on there, like miserable in a way where
Oh,
you
yikes.
can ask like a simple question, just actually going there just for curiosity, wanting to learn from others, and then people just like attack you, be like, how can you even ask that question?
That's silly.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's like literally a playground. But so I try my best. It's so hard, and it's also, I feel like it's kind of like a bad addiction for me. I keep going back to it.
The drama. Yeah.
Yeah, but I hate it about myself, and that's what I was talking about in that episode. It's like, am I getting addicted to this? Like, I don't want to be addicted to this. I want to be able to not surround myself with that kind of negativity, because it's horrible for your mental health, and I just want to be happy, you know? But I also have this feeling where I feel like I always have to prove someone wrong, which is not healthy as well, and that's like a whole other type of conversation.
I think helping look at things with the drama triangle, I heard this term and it's really changed the way I see things now, is that we fall into these like stories because they're so interesting, that either someone's a hero, a villain, or a victim.
Uh huh.
And so what you were talking about with that kind of gene disease model for addiction, that's a victim
Yes,
role.
victim
And I don't
mentality.
like that. I don't
Yeah.
like playing that role. But then it's hard to kind of shift out of it. So I don't know. There's different ways that you can go than those three models. Like, and I found that like creating my reality, like taking power of my creation, is how I get out of victim. It's like, no, I can do something here. I have responsibility to do something here other than just accepting something.
Yes, clapping for you here, because I just want to keep meeting more people like you that have that mindset, because there's so many people out there who have that whole victim mentality and just blames everything around them on why they are miserable in their life. And I believe that at the end of the day, you got to take ownership of your own life. Like I feel like people just feel that everybody owes them something. If someone's more successful than others, like, you need to give me part of your success. Like I can see a lot of that too, and it's like, and people really believing that there's no way out of like poverty because of the system. And all I think is, Some people definitely have it harder,
Right.
the way the system is, to make it out of poverty. Absolutely, totally agree with that. But impossible? I don't believe in that. Unless you're like literally have like I don't know, like being of like a vegetable or you can't move or just like some type of disability that like keeps you from that. Like that I can understand, but if you're just like saying you can't do it just because your belief, like what like I feel like you have something to say, but like I want to hear what your
Yeah.
thoughts are.
We put the limitations on ourselves, what we're
Yeah.
capable of. And not all of those were ideas that we came up with. A lot of them are passed on and then we accept them. So you can just
Yeah.
say, no, thank you. I don't want that gift. And but it's easy to fall into this. Like
Yeah.
I'm not enlightened here. Like I go through blaming every day and then I have to make a choice to like, no, I'm gonna get out of this. Like
Yeah.
I don't give in to that. I don't know why
Yeah.
we have it. I don't know why we do.
Well,
I
because the
get so
brain's
annoyed with
negative.
myself.
The
Yeah,
brain
yeah.
loves negativity. And like that's the problem is that our brains were default as negative because they put this in because the brain is trying to protect itself and it's always assuming the worst and it's like feels like it has to be protecting you. So it goes to this negative default. And that's just how humans were back before modern day, where they always had to like survive, right? So
Right.
our brains are still like our whole like as a human being, it's still there, even though after all like evolution and such. But I think we also do have like the power of choice, which a lot of people feel that we don't have choices, and that's where I kind of can't comprehend. It's like if you're like a child, sure, because you and your caregivers make your decisions, but if you're like an adult, like even if your life is like super busy or super hard, you feel like you're in like a rat race, you can't get out, and you just feel like you're just kind of like always like on the you know what I mean, like the rat race or wheel and such. Like I feel like that at one point, and I had to make certain decisions and sacrifices to get where I am today, where I was able to leave my 9 to 5. But like, it wasn't easy. I had to like, it definitely wasn't
Yeah.
easy at all. I had my fair share of mental breakdowns and just wanting to give up. But it's like you have to ch- choose. Like if you want something at the end of the day, you will get it. And one thing I want to mention since it was just past Christmas is that in 2019, I did this thing called Vlogmas. Is what YouTubers do. Okay, I used to be a YouTuber and such, and it's pretty much you have to upload every single day, 25 videos, and like
Ooh,
YouTube videos, not like TikToks, like YouTube videos. And I did it. I did
nice.
it with a full time job. And so I watched like right now all that's private on my YouTube, but like I was looking at like the last video and the last video was like, "Oh, how I did it." And I was like, "Okay, let me watch 2019 Justine and see what she had to say." And she was basically saying like, "Okay, I had to prepare before it started. I had to of course first pre-film my intro. I had to pretty much start the filming process to start so I could schedule out videos in the beginning. I also had to wake up at like 6 in the morning to film a video. I literally woke up at 6 a.m. to film a video of me trying on children's clothes.
Working for it.
But you know what's crazy too? That video did the best on my channel, like over the
Of
years.
course. Yeah.
Cause people look at they're like, her, like this grown woman is trying on. It was like a trend at the time and such. But I would do like videos like that. So I woke up at 6 a.m. to film this video, and then after that, I had to like get ready to go to my adult job. And then I came home at like 7 o'clock after like rush hour and everything. And I was like, hey, time to edit a video and time to do this. And it's like, I'll be up to like 2 a.m. And then it would be a cycle there. 2 a.m. I wake up again at like 6 or 7 in the morning. And it's like, it was hard. It was very, very hard. And I was just completely like halfway through. I just felt like completely dead inside. But I think is I really wanted to manage this. I wanted to do this challenge.
Okay.
Like I
Yep.
wanted to
Me
achieve
too.
this.
Yeah, it's
Yes.
determined.
And I knew that it was temporary. That's another thing too. Like I knew this is gonna
Right.
suck for me, but I know it's just temporary. So that's another thing that kind of kept me going. But man, like I literally filmed like 2 second clips of each video to put in like my last video to show like a not a collage, what's that, like a montage of every and I you can like as I was watching it, I'm like, you can kind of see me slowly getting exhausted and slowly just like looking at
Oh
my
man.
face just
Yeah.
dying. And then I had a moment of like feeling alive again, and I think it had to do with like my little like weekend trip with my friends to the beach. Maybe that kind of recharged me a little bit. But it's so funny where it's like you can like see my hairs in my head. I'm just like, all right guys, we are trying Starbucks drinks.
Here we go. Yep. Yeah, it's wild.
Oh my god.
You
So
made it
that's
through. Yeah.
yeah, so that's like, obviously it's not like the same situation for everybody, but I think it's just like the whole idea and the principle is that if you really put your mind to something, you can do it. And I know it sounds so like, I don't know, what do they say? Like if you put your mind to something, you can achieve. Like, you know how they say like these types of quotes?
Yeah, it's a little corny. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I get it now after I did what I just did, but it's like if you really truly want something, like truly, like you'll get it. And there's sometimes I think I want something and then I don't get it and I get mad at myself, like, but I really want it. Why didn't I get it? And I'm like, okay, I guess I really didn't want it. Like,
Yeah. You had
like
like underlying
subconsciously.
commands elsewhere. Yeah. And I like to think of it more like control over my internal world. So I can't control what other people do.
Hmm.
I can't control what happens to me, what situations I'm in. I'm presented with something and I get to choose how I react to that. Not only with my behavior, but with my thoughts. If I get caught into this negative cycle of thoughts, like, oh, this sucks. I don't want to do this. Like, I can control my attitude where it's like,
Yes.
hey, and then a lot of the ways it's hard to be chipper about some of the stuff we have to deal with.
Yeah.
No one wants to have, home repairs or whatever have
Mm,
you, but it's the acceptance that
yeah.
helps me get through that, because if I get stuck in a place of resistance over and over and over again, it just I don't know how to say it, it just brings down my spirit.
Yeah.
It like unnecessarily, where it's like, hey, this is happening, I can just deal with this. I guess maybe it's that sense of drama, that victimhood that we were talking about, where if I get stuck in the poor me, then it doesn't help anybody, especially me. But if I'm like, hey, this is the reality that I'm being presented right now, there's nothing I could do about it, I'm going to make the best of it, it just goes so much better. So that's what I
Yeah.
try to control, instead of like, I don't know, like necessarily like goal setting for me, but just like, how can I just be at peace and calm?
Yes.
Because
Yes.
that's the inner war that I go through every day.
Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of us do. And when you just like accept the situation, that's when like you feel so much better and so much like calmer.
Yeah.
And I was gonna say, like one thing is kind of very simple is let's say you're just making dinner or whatever and you're getting plates and it just one just falls and just cracks and stuff. You can make a choice. You want to be like, fuck my life's a mess or this and like kind of
Right.
go off the rails and
All the
such. But
pieces. Yeah.
or you just like, okay, it just happens. Let's go clean it up.
Yeah. Moving on.
It's like
Yeah.
you make that choice and I feel like a lot of people just also don't understand that you can make a choice on how to react on things and the way you make that choice and the way you take that accountability of, you know, how you handle certain situations, it's like you just feel so much happier. But when you also are playing the victimhood all the time, it's like, oh, my life's a mess. Why do bad things constantly keep happening to me? And we've all been there. I've been there too. Like I look at like my Facebook memories of like what I used to post, I don't know, like 14 years ago when I was like a teenager. And I would just be like, so victimhood.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I was just complaining about
Teens.
my
Yeah.
life. Yeah, yeah, no,
It's
teen
a
world is,
frustrating time. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So I'll be reading this stuff and I'm just like, oh, I think there was one status that said everyone's like, I don't know, something super negative, like, fuck this world or something like that. I don't remember, but then crazy too, it's like 10 years after that, like another memory. It's like, okay, so I think I understand life. And it's like this whole like paragraph of like
Your epiphany.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
like talking about peace and and I was just like, man, what a change in my like mindset. So it's
That's
like,
beautiful. Yeah.
right. So I think that like at the end of the day, everybody has been there. I don't think I've really met anyone who just was born with that skill or had that skill before they experienced that negative mindset. So I feel like it's a skill to be able to react and it takes time and growth to be able to do something like that. So I try my best. I try so hard because I want to see all these like negative Nancy's and all. I'm just like, they're just not there yet. Like, it's okay. Like, you're just
Well,
not there yet. Like, okay.
part of what I've seen too, like in the spiritual community, a lot of them, well, not a lot of them, but some of them, I've heard like life is all good and everything is good and perfect and love. And they never want to talk about the reality that people
Toxic
are,
positivity.
yes, people are struggling and things are
Mm,
hard. And I don't think that you can really get to that place of love and peace and understanding and wisdom and compassion without having the tough times.
yes.
So it's just like part of the journey. Like
Yeah.
in the way I see it. And that's how I see like going through addiction. Because I used to be really ashamed of it and
Hmm.
have like all this guilt and just beat myself up about it. And then I was finally able to quit. And then I had all this regret because I got like a taste of how amazing life is without smoking every day and
Yeah.
poisoning yourself. And was like, what have I done? I'm so stupid. All this waste, this regret. I wish I could go back and change it, and kind of obsessed in that way. And
Yeah.
then, like I said, I used that acceptance to move through that. Well, it did happen. There's absolutely nothing I can do to change it. And I've actually gotten to a place of gratitude now. Like, as crazy as that sounds, it's like I'm actually grateful that I smoked because it like pushed me to develop like more self-awareness. Like it created the crisis that I needed to actually go deep inside myself and get to know myself and move through all the conditioning, move through the ego, and see like that calm, confident center that knows like exactly what to do, like with intuition and just self-love. Like I would not have gotten there if I hadn't tried to, destroy myself.
Yeah,
Essentially.
yeah. And
Yeah.
honestly, the wisest people comes from like a past that can be dark like that. And that's why they say like turning pain into purpose. Like, I'm very, very happy that you ended up quitting. We're gonna talk more about like that process for you, but you're doing more than just quitting. You helping other people. So let's talk about the time that you did quit. I want to like know a little bit more detail of that and how you're able to quit because it's hard for people. Like there's things out there like obviously the gum that people talk about. I don't know if
Yeah.
you tried that. Like what happened? Like walk me through it.
So like I said, I was trying to quit tons of times, and every time I was doing it, I was like playing these little mind games with myself where I was like, oh, I'll set rules, and then none of the rules worked, and then I was like, oh, okay, well, I'll like play like a reward punishment system with it, and none of that worked. And then it's like, okay, well, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna use like willpower and just power through this. But I would always find some kind of reason to like work around it. So
Yeah.
what really finally helped me was like getting out of my mind and stepping into my heart. Like that's the way I was ultimately able to get there. But I think that things just got so bad. It's pretty embarrassing, but I had a night where I was driving drunk, got in a huge fight with my partner, and was like, you know what? This is horrible. I'm going to like ruin the best thing I have in my life. I'm going to push away the love I have. Like I need to get my stuff together here and stop prioritizing all these addictions over the person I love the most. And so like having that moment of truth for me helped me just like make the commitment in my head. I'm just like, I'm done. Like it's either this or I'm going to be alone. And
Yeah.
I have a choice here, like a clear choice, like happiness and future or just like destruction and loneliness. So
Yeah.
that helped me just make a decision. And like, I'm going to commit to this no matter how hard it is. But that I found that when I was doing different things than I had been doing. So one of those things is like talking kindly to myself, it sounds so simple and silly, but like it really, really made a difference because I didn't even notice this kind of cycle of negative self-talk that I was in. I kind of just like took it like I just go through the world because I was really successful in school and in work. And so these things had kind of made me look outwardly like, oh, she's doing really well. She's got it together. Cause I kind of had like this drill sergeant in my head every day that's like, get up and work harder and do more. Just
Yeah.
really, really harsh and mean. And I just took a moment to notice that. And I was like, whoa, what's going on here? Like, I wouldn't talk to anyone else this way. Why am I talking to myself this way? And I was like, okay, maybe this is a problem. And then I was able to clearly see that every time I had a craving to smoke, it was because I was having a negative thought about myself.
Yeah. Exactly.
So once I was able to link that, it's like, okay, so I see what the source is here, this negative self-talk. And so started working with that. Every time I'd have a negative thought, I would try a positive thought. And it felt really silly and ridiculous. I'm just like, oh I sound, like I got my head up my butt here, like things like it's hard. It's ridiculously how hard it can be to look at yourself in the mirror and say, I love you.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of reasons for that. I think that I kind of thought that was selfishness, that I was supposed to show up for everyone else. But then, like I said, I couldn't show up for my partner without taking care of myself. Like I realized I had to do the self-work to be anything for anybody. So I guess that's a really long-winded answer, but I guess it was like working on paying attention to the thoughts, trying to change the thoughts to something that felt good. Because when I had those thoughts of self-love, like it just made me feel better. So something that lifts you up, makes you feel motivated. Because being harsh, it never worked for me. I could never bully myself into being the person I thought I was supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
And what's kind of wild too is that I always thought that I was like missing something, that there was something wrong with me. And that's why I smoked. Like, oh, I'm just a weak person. I'm a bad person. And I need to be better. I need to work harder and be better. But the reality was that I needed to strip away all of the kind of crappy beliefs that had come to form. Like I had to let go of attachments, let go of beliefs. And it was more of a process of letting go to find out like who I really was underneath all the things that I had put on to try to fit in and be successful.
Yeah, and I feel like that's like the greatest thing too is really understanding yourself, because a lot of people don't do that. And it looks like your turning point was because of love, because of your,
Yes.
your family. You wanted to be able to show up for them and such. So that makes sense that that's like the turning point. I'm glad that you brought that up, because when I was like listening to everything, I'm like, okay, yeah. So for people who are like listening to they're smokers, like I just like hope they hear us and like sit down and be like, yes, I want motivated to do this for my loved ones and such. And that's a really good strategy as well with trying to replace like those negative thoughts with like good thoughts, because that's a lot what majority of people struggle with is like loving ourselves.
Yes.
It's so crazy how like, I mean, everyone has had those demons that they just have a hard time loving themselves. And I think like I hope like with all these conversations that we're having and talking about mental health and such, that for the next generation, that they don't have to feel like how we felt.
I'm trying that for my daughter.
Mm-hmm.
I want her to know that she's accepted for exactly as she is.
Mm-hmm.
But it's gonna happen. It's like I feel like it's part of the human condition. Like this is like ancient mythic stuff. Like they had a really solid understanding of this, that every kid is gonna get wounded at some point.
True.
Like it just has to happen, and it's part of like our soul's journey to self-discovery. We have to get hurt, and it's almost like the two are tied together. Like I don't know if you've noticed this, that like a lot of the people's strengths can also be a weakness. It feels like the wounds come with the gifts. So, it kind of swings either way, in a given moment. So it's just part of who we are. And it's not like we need to like blame anyone, like we were talking about, like, oh, you hurt me and now my whole life is ruined. It's just going to be part of the human experience.
Okay, Jessi, so I'm really curious and I need to ask you this question. So did you go cold turkey, or did you kind of like weed off it like little by little?
So like I said, I was never a type of person that could do a little, that could moderate well. And so I had tried that forever. I tried all sorts of different methods, just a little bit less, maybe just some of this and some of that. And ultimately, cold turkey was it for me. And it was hard. It was like crashing and burning. I feel like it's kind of helpful because you almost need to like hit that wall with it to realize what a big impact all this is having on you. If you can't get up and function without cigarettes, that's something that's really taken a hold of your life.
Mm-hmm. So
it's
sad that's my way with caffeine.
Yep. Yeah. So
like, That's so bad. I can't like go on with my day without coffee.
Yeah.
It's really sad. I started when I was 16. It's like my own like little addiction, I guess. Well, social media and coffee, I would say, are the two things that are like hard for me. Like, especially with social media, since it's also like my job too. It's like, how do I have like that fine line where I'm like, okay, put everything away, no social media. Like it's hard.
Yes.
And the same with coffee. Like I'll get headaches.
Yeah, coffee is a hard one for me too.
Yeah,
I'm still a coffee drinker.
Yeah. I think for also just like the majority of just everybody, we like all need our coffee. I also just want to like ask this question too about, I've been meaning to ask this for like the longest time in this conversation, is the gum. What is your opinion on that? Do you think it actually like works, or is this just kind of like just a way to sell more stuff, like marketing?
I found it to be disgusting. It's the worst tasting thing ever. I
Really?
mean, you're looking at a cigarette though, so those don't taste great either, especially once you stop and get some time away from it. But I don't like to take that approach that it kind of just feels like a replacement. Like I found that a lot of people, or even myself, like I was saying with smoking pot and smoking cigarettes, they'll like go to vaping to try to get off of cigarettes, and then they wind up with a vaping addiction. And it kind of just prolongs the whole process. So the idea with the gum and the patches is that you're going to like have less and less and less amount of nicotine, and eventually you just won't have any. But it's kind of like ripping off a Band-Aid. It's like, don't you
Mhm.
just want to get it over with? Do you want to keep having that struggle on your mind every day? And it's constantly reminding you of smoking. Every time you chew on it, you're like, oh, I would be smoking a cigarette. Like, I found it really helpful for me to not count days. I know that's a big deal in the recovery world, is how many days. And it was so freeing for me to not have to think about smoking anymore. The last thing I wanted to do was count days. I'm like, I
True.
don't want to reference myself to smoking anymore. You know what I mean? It kind of feels like, and it gets you in that kind of mindset of like, oh, I'm going without instead of everything that you're gaining. It's like, this is just normal life. The abnormality was when I was smoking, so that
Mm.
I kind of just helped me get over it, put it behind, get through the worst of it so that I could start enjoying life again.
Yeah. And also I just feel like a lot of people definitely have different ways of looking at it.
Right.
For me personally, like I feel like the counting does kind of help me. The only reason I would say that is because I have a hard time believing that I'm succeeding at something. So if I connect my success to like, I'm trying to word this correctly, where if I can, something external is pretty much confirming that I am being successful at something. So like for me, I mean, I wouldn't be counting like forever. Like I wouldn't be doing
Right.
that. Like, okay, I'm like 1006. Like I wouldn't do that. It would be more like 30 days and that's it. Like
Yeah.
I'll be like, okay, I'm gonna make a goal of it being like 30 days. Okay, good. I'm 30 days clean. And then it just helps me feel confident and then change my whole belief system and I just keep going. I just feel like in the beginning I need to have something
Yeah.
like that.
I would always have a little celebration every night. It's just like,
Yeah.
I made it through another day.
Yeah.
Like, I definitely had that kind of sense of it. It's just like, I just took it like one day at a time, just like I did
Mm.
it today. And I feel like that can be really helpful too, is just, it can be like daunting when you're like, oh my gosh, this feels terrible. And I could never have a cigarette the rest of my life. And I just found it to like focus in. Like, I'm not going to have a cigarette right now, especially with early on, like the first 3 days with the cravings. They can get really intense. And it's like, okay, I'm just not going to smoke for 20 minutes. Let's see, like just little goals like that to
Mhm.
get through. And then the 20 minutes passes and you're like, I don't want to get in the car and go down to the gas station and spend my money. Like you can just kind of like ride that wave of emotion, that like kind of panic when you don't know what to do to deal with your emotions, because I created such a strong emotional connection that anytime I was like sad or angry or just even small, like slightly annoyed, bored, all these things that's just like, I have to have my cigarette. Where's my cigarette? Because I had just conditioned myself like that for so long.
Mhm.
So just kind of like letting that moment pass, because it's temporary. Emotions are temporary. And like a huge part of it too was like that acceptance, just like accepting that I'm going to have different emotions and that's okay. I feel
Mhm.
like I was using cigarettes to like stuff them back down. Like, oh no, we're not going to be sad. Just smoke and don't think about that. Distract, kind of like as a distraction
We're all
tool.
hiding from our feelings. Like I
Yeah.
think we've all been there. We all like don't want to because it doesn't feel good if you feel like depressed or sad. But like when I feel it, I just welcome it. I'm like, okay, it's going through your body. Like it's not going to sit there forever. It will, in a way, kind of sit there forever if you don't process it.
Yeah, and I feel like the shame can be so much worse if you're like, I shouldn't be feeling this way. What's wrong with me? That
Oh, I've
that
had
just
that.
adds layers. It's like, no, it's normal to feel sad. I have a baby, and she has taught me so much about this. These little guys, they come out and they're angry and they're sad, and it's completely natural. These aren't bad feelings. It's part of being
Yeah.
human.
Yeah. And I think teaching kids that to show every emotion is not like if someone's depressed or sad or angry, it's like okay, it's like it's okay. And then when people just put in like the back of their head, it's gonna still come out as anger because I feel like even if it's just sadness and it didn't just come out as anger, I feel like over time it's just gonna turn into anger, like manifests into it. Like I've had a lot of sadness as a child and in high school, and I have so many moments where I just get angry so much. Like, you just have so much anger. Like, I'm literally like, I had like a big teddy bear that I would just punch the crap out of it because I'd rather do
Nice.
that than punch someone else. You know what I mean? Like,
Absolutely.
I
Yeah.
was just like such an angry person. And like, people wouldn't really think that because I don't look like I could hurt a fly, which I mean, I've hurt flies before, but you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't look like I'm a person that would I don't know, I'll beat the shit out of somebody, but yeah, it's just and sometimes when I have like my huge outbursts, like the really scary ones, I'm usually alone when that happens because that's like a side of me where I do not want anyone to see.
Yeah.
I always get mad at myself, which is crazy. I'm like angry and I'm getting mad at myself. And I was just like thinking, I was like, I think it's just because I've had so much sadness that it's just like I need to work on that sadness and get through that, so I don't have this automatic feeling of being angry. And I didn't realize that it manifests, and I was a very sad child, and it's just showing up as anger as an adult. Slowly what's happening.
Yeah, I can
Yeah.
relate to that too.
Yeah. And mine's like my anger is not even like that bad compared to like so many other people. Like around this holiday this season, so I go out and I like do Uber Eats to make some extra, like, some money and such. And I seeing everyone screaming at each other. Like I went to like Popeyes and talk about to pick up stuff, and then at Popeyes, everyone, it was like really busy, and then these like three people like were screaming at this poor employee. And they all had their own moments when they were screaming, but just I don't understand how people can just like go into full volume and just scream at a person like that. Like, we've all obviously had our moments when we're frustrated with certain customer service. Like, we've all been there. But like for me personally, if I'm like angry, I'm kind of just like I kind of a little weird. I'm like a little like I'm not trying to like be difficult. Just like this time, like I'm kind of like this with them. I'm like
Yeah.
I kind of gone weird. I'm like smiling while I'm like it's just
Yeah.
because like I don't want to blow up because I know how hurtful that is. Like I've had that happen to me working in like a customer guest service job for like over a decade. It takes a lot on you, a huge toll. But seeing all that anger, it's more of what I'm trying to say is how people don't have like the emotional intelligence or just kind of being at peace with certain things or just patience.
Yeah, I think that part of it is toughing down because it comes back up and it's so much stronger. Like
Yes.
I think part of it is dealing with it in the moment, processing it, letting it flow through. Like
Mm-hmm.
the word emotions, it's like movement. It's supposed to move. So if you like swallow it and you stuff it down, and you're like, no, 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 no. It's like lives inside of you and it comes up unexpectedly and it comes up violently.
Yes.
And so I think part of it is allowing yourself to have the unpleasant feelings or, like I said, like the ones we tend to avoid because we were taught like, no, you can't show that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And because there's certain ways, it's like not the feeling that's bad. It's the behavior.
Yeah.
If you can, like you said, like punching that bear, that's a great way
Mm-hmm.
to get that out, let that move through you. And then I was feeling like another part of it too is that people aren't just living the way that makes them happy. They're not living authentically.
Yeah.
And that just, it makes you feel so powerless that you grasp onto power in really strange and weird ways, like road rage kind of stuff, where you're like, I'm just
Yeah.
going to have my control in this moment right
Yeah.
here. Or even with addiction, it's like I can control what I put in my body and the way that I feel. Like I don't want to feel the way I'm feeling. So I'm going to control that by using a substance to
Yeah.
manipulate my hormones and the way I'm feeling about myself. So if we can find ways to do things that like light us up, even,
Mm-hmm.
like we got to go to work and live life like that, but just like having our own private moments where we can just let down all those expectations and do what actually just brings us joy. I find that creativity is really nice way to do it. That's I started writing again and I love it. So
Yeah, that's a great. Now I really do want to move into honor your heart. I want you to tell me more about that. 'Cause I don't have much knowledge of that, but can you talk about that?
yeah, so I talked a little bit about, like I said, getting
Mm-hmm.
caught in my mind
Mm-hmm.
and getting caught in these loops and these cycles and these patterns that I just couldn't break. So what helped me to realize that my mind is not who I am. It is a tool for me to
Yeah.
use. That deep down within me, there is a calm center that has purpose and meaning in this life. And I find that within my heart. And I kind of came to this through myths, ancient myths, because it feels like people understood the power of the heart, that
Mm-hmm.
the center of life was at the heart, not the mind. And that's where we have compassion, connection, empathy, all the things that make us human, that are our best sides. I just feel like it's related to that inner self, not the mind that's constantly trying to plan and organize and control and all that kind of thing. So I started tapping into my heart wisdom and making time to connect with my heart every day. And it can be very difficult at first to tap into that because the world is loud, busy,
Mm-hmm.
and the mind is loud and busy. So you have to take like moments to be quiet and to pay attention and be still. And sometimes it can, well, definitely for me, it can really be painful. But if you tap into that love of the heart, you can work through that pain and get to something better. So that's what really motivated me to quit smoking. I know I talked about, the love of my partner being a starting point for me to really put my all into quitting, but it wasn't quite enough. I had to get into that love for myself. Like the love that he has for me was like a model for me. Like I'm like, okay, this is what it looks like. Can I do that for myself? And so, yeah, that's what I walk through the process that I went through to kind of break down some of these emotional blocks that we have, these limiting beliefs, so that you can like discover who you are and tap into unlimited potential for what you want your life to look like. You become a creator. And yeah, it's not really a memoir. It's more like a guide, like a how-to. And it's really self-directed. So it's not like a recipe. It's like, here's some tools that you can use that worked for me. And I kind of wrote it to myself like 10 years ago. Like, what do I wish I had known earlier? Like, what could I have used to cut out some of this struggle that I went through? But like I said, like I've come to terms now that it's like, it just had to be that way. But at the same time, it's like, I would want to help someone that is looking for it, get the information that it took me so long to accumulate for myself.
Yeah, I really appreciate you, being that person that would create that guide because then it makes it easier for other people where they're literally given like a resource and information that they can, better themselves and quit smoking. I want to first thank you for, contributing that to our society and, providing a resource like that. Because I never really heard of a guide like that. But then again, I'm not really in like that know much about it.
No, everything that I encountered as a smoker was all focusing on smoking as the problem, never looking at underlying emotional ties to it. And it was always just like fear based with numbers and science,
Mhm.
which I was really into all that for a long time. Is if you can't see it, it's not real. But that's not the reality of being a human. So
Yeah,
we have a
true.
lot unseen within us. And yeah, I had a lot of experiences like at the doctor or even the dentist where it's just like, what are you doing? You're taking off years of your life, like these big, long projected fears, and they just never ever touched me. First off, when you're young, you think you're invincible,
Yeah.
and I don't know, I just kind of feel like the physical aspect of it isn't really what's going on there. Like people are searching for something emotionally, for connection, for really really deep things, like and that's what they end up reaching for the cigarette for. That's what I was. It's like, hey, I'm feeling lonely. I wish I had some companionship. Like I'm gonna go smoke with my neighbor or my friends, or I'm feeling really stressed and I want to relax. Let me have a cigarette. And I've learned now to find other ways to meet those needs because the cigarette wasn't doing it in
Yeah.
reality. I thought it was, but it wasn't. It was not relaxing me. It was
Yeah.
not getting me friends. You realize that once you quit, when you get to the other
Mhm.
side, it's hard to see when you're in it and when you're
Mhm.
going through it. But once you get to the other side, you're like, "Oh, it wasn't doing any of those things I thought it did. It wasn't, it didn't have magical powers. It was just the beliefs that I put on it. I thought that was the only way I could make friends. So,
Yeah.
and it kind of wrapped up my own identity in it, which is like silly. Like, how could you be your behavior? You're so much more than that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I think that's a beautiful thing that you just said. And I feel like so many people have to hear that, especially if they're struggling, and that there is hope out there, when they may feel like you can never quit. Like you are proof. And that's why I love bringing people like you onto this podcast, is to show proof that you can overcome any challenges that go through your life. So I want to thank you so much for taking the time to be on my podcast today.
thank you for having me. I'm so happy to share. Like I was saying too, it's an ongoing process. It's not like I'm completely healed.
Mhm.
It's not like I know better than anyone else. Like I learned so much from the smokers that are going through this too. It's like a mutual thing that we
Yeah.
can support each other. Like I'm definitely a wounded healer. Um, I'm still hurt and I'm
Mhm.
working on myself, and it's just so great to just share what I know and learn more from others.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely always a process working on yourself. I 100% believe in that. For me, that's like with my mental health, just like working on myself and not being toxic. But yeah, it's a process. And I just accepted that it's forever. Just, gets easier each day, and it's okay if sometimes you can go back because, recovery and such is like it's not like linear. Like it's normal to go back and then go forward and go back. Yeah. But
And it's worth it, though.
yeah,
It's worth it.
yeah,
Those glimpses, those moments of wholeness are all worth it.
yeah, absolutely. All right, so everyone listening, hope you guys have a good rest of your day and stay tuned for the next episode.